let's dive into our first panel discussion, which is called Web2 to Web3, the paradigm shift in digital infrastructure. Please welcome Andy Leon, Tim Aaron, Talget Dosanov, Rafael Trepka, Darian Robinova. Thank you.
Darian, jump on it. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Good morning, everyone. It's always excited to be the first panel. You know, we like to talk about things that are more practical, you know. So a lot of us are living in the Web2 world. And when we talk about Web2, you know, everybody is kind of satisfied, you know, but a bunch of us, you know, in the Web3 space are trying our very best to see how Web2 and Web3 can merge together, right? So I have very nice friends and panelists with me today, you know. We will look at how the digital transformation from Web2 to Web3 is currently happening, and what we should all be looking at, and what are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves, you know. So without further ado, I will get my panelists, my friends, you know, to give an introduction about themselves, tell us what they are doing right now, and then after which we will start the whole panel discussion. Ladies first.
Thank you. So I'm so happy to be first. My name is Daria, and I worked more than 7 years in cryptocurrency. First, my job was like traditional venture capital, and then I used to work in exchange OKX, Binance, and right now Hobby. So, and I am so glad to share my experience with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, first of all, would like to thank the organizers for inviting and organizing this kind of event. So I'm very excited about it. My name is Talgat. I work for, and I'm co-founder of boutique-style exchange in Europe, Kazakhstan, and Australia. We have 4 licenses currently, and we work within one big group, which also includes Nature Resources Corporation with operations in 12 countries, and a private commercial bank in Kazakhstan. So what we do, we are trying to integrate all our services and to make a transition between the traditional finances to more digital asset ones.
That's nice. Rafa?
Thank you very much as well for the invitation. I'm Rafael Trepka. Currently, I take care of MasterCard. I am responsible for MasterCard in Central Asia, including Kazakhstan. Thank you for invitation to a very good event. By the way, thank you, Talgat, as well for the whole cooperation, because there we very closely work with ITBX, with ERG Group, with Eurasian Bank. For me, great to be back in London. I will probably later on refer to that during the answer. And yeah, as a short intro to MasterCard, as we usually say, there are things money can't buy. For everything else, there is MasterCard. And I will refer to that later. So, Tim, over to you.
Hello, my name is Tim Aaron. I'm a UK-based barrister. I'm a lawyer based in London. I specialise in financial services, regulatory work. And in that context have started over the last 6 years or so, been working quite considerably in the decentralized finance space.
Okay, and myself, I'm Andy Lian. I'm actually based in Singapore. It's always good to see all my friends in London. I usually introduce myself as a book author, but at the same time, I'm a licensed fund manager. I'm also an advisor to Bybit, one of the top derivatives exchange in the world right now. I always start off with this journey of mine. You know, I started in 2017. You know, I give a lot of advice to different government. You know, initially they look at me like an alien. I mean, you know, who is this guy? You know, from Asia. And then slowly moving to 2023. You know, they are very receptive about it. And a lot of these government are actually looking at how they can bring their Web2 guys, you know, into the Web3 space, and how we could all work together, you know. So this panel would revolve around this topic, and my very first question would be to Talgat, you know, You know, we talk about Web2 to Web3 in many commercialized contexts, right? And the word tokenization, you know, I think everyone here would heard about, oh, I want to tokenize, you know. And the word tokenization is very common. You know, do you think tokenization is the way forward, you know, in today's context?
Thank you. Yes, we truly believe it is a way forward, and as Baroness just mentioned, there is a lot of synergies between crypto and traditional markets, not just financial markets, but also healthcare and etc. We are quite lucky because our exchange is part of a bigger group, which includes Natural Resource Corporation, and one of the plans that we have that we are also discussing with some of our colleagues from other big exchanges and fintech companies is an idea of tokenization of real-world assets. As you can see from the news in the past few months, there have been a lot of headlines about potential of tokenization. Not just like paintings, real estate, but also putting ownership of real-world asset on a blockchain can provide a huge opportunity for investors just to like financial traditional markets. So for us, this is a great opportunity, and what we are trying to do right now is actually tokenize a couple of metals with the ERG and make sure that those assets can be available not just to institutional investors like it's been always the case, but finally to the retail investors. So because we are fractionizing the metal, you can buy it with as little as like $10, for example, and even request a physical delivery if you are electric vehicle producer or electronics producer. Before it was only through London Metal Exchange and other certified exchanges. Now we can try to lower the entry barriers to as short as possible and to allow everyone actually be part of this new market, which includes the traditional metals and commodities and mainstream cryptocurrencies like USDT, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. Yes.
Okay, I think those are very great insights, you know, but going a little bit deeper, you know, because you only painted the more rosy picture, right? You could get $10, you could buy some stuff and so forth, but where are the challenges, you know? Can you share some light on the challenges that we will see?
Yes, because what we believe is the crypto market has to evolve. At the moment, it is shocked by a couple of negative news every year. Some big exchanges shut down, some big players lose their money, somebody is hacked, etc., etc. So there should be less negative background on news, and definitely there is a volatility on the market which is not really good for some of the commodity traders. And what we think can be in the future is when more institutional investors can actually come into this market and start trading. Even Tesla, for example, they buy a lot of metals from producers in China and they pay with traditional bank transfers. What they can do is buy a basket of metals from the producers directly and request a physical delivery. Borderless, easy, can be sold 24/7, unlike the traditional finance markets. But of course, the volatility, security issues, some negative information, news, and the other problem that I can see is regulation uncertainty. In some countries, people still cannot differentiate properly whether this is a security token, asset-backed token, or utility token, and regulators can actually close you down for like having a security token, even though it's only like an asset-backed or stable coin. So there is a lot of regulation uncertainty in some jurisdictions.
Okay, I think that's really fair, giving both sides of the story, you know.
Yes.
So maybe the next question is to Daria. You know, how do you see tokenization, you know, moving towards the more institution side? You know, are the institution players really open about tokenization, you know?
It's so interesting question. Honestly, no, because institutions are more about trading, and they care about like fast trading, and about tokenization is more like a long way to get the money. And right now, it's about also so strictly about regulation. For example, like housing in Dubai. It's a market where you can find a lot of ways for tokenization, but in other countries not so supported. And also about tokenization of the homes, a lot of countries not support this because they think this is like something strange, and they don't know how to get taxes from this. So it's a big problem. So I think first of all that we need to have a strict regulation of tokenization, and after, of course, like institutional traders will be interested in this because right now it's so like tricky for them to buy a lot of things in tokenization way, and for example in a few days the regulation will change, and this will be like a huge problem.
Okay. You know, since we're on the topic of more financial stuff and so forth, maybe I'll turn around and look at Tim. You know, how do you agree with the observations? And do you see the paradigm shift within the financial space more towards the positive side? Bless you, or more towards the negative side? You know.
Overall, I strongly agree with Talgat in terms of his observations about the benefits of tokenization and where the market's likely to go. I think that the difficulty that's going to come lies largely in what's sort of the subject of this panel. With the tokenization comes a democratization of the market. At the moment, I think what you have is, for example, if you pick the metal as commodity space, very large players, institutional players, all very able to protect themselves, look after themselves, and able to understand the markets they're operating in. And to the extent that for example, if the commodities aren't properly there, so maybe the audits aren't properly carried out, so you don't know necessarily whether the warehouses have metals in, for example, the players in this space are able to protect themselves in these circumstances. The difficulty that comes with the democratization of this market is that as you make it available to the likes of you and me rather than Goldman Sachs, you potentially mean that there are significant risks that come when these products become widely available. If you have very well-behaved actors who are ensuring that the commodities are properly audited, etc., those protections are put in place at the point of the issuer, and that's where we should be. The difficulty comes, I think, when the markets become more broad and various assets get commoditized and those checks aren't done, because then those products will be made available and the democratized market won't necessarily have the protections in place they should have. So broadly, I agree. I'm not completely convinced that the regulatory tools are necessarily there to currently protect it as they currently exist. I think Talgat touched on the focus of regulators, which is very much probably unnecessarily, but too much focused on in terms of how to classify the products and potentially to apply sort of legacy approaches to regulating the products. If you say they're a security, you might expect certain disclosures to be made appropriate for securities markets, but maybe that's not appropriate for these new markets. And in these circumstances, I think that it would be, and maybe a wider point for discussion later, Andy, but appropriate for regulators to, in a sense, allow these markets to develop, not necessarily try to stifle them by squeezing them into legacy boxes. But at the same time, I appreciate it's very difficult for regulators because they don't necessarily have the legislative tools to properly protect the consumers that they are obligated to protect. So it does give rise to problems as well.
Okay. You know, we talk about how we look at the financial side of things, you know, how we tokenize and so forth. You know, do you think maybe the question is to Rafael, is do you think there will be other problems like scalability issues, liquidity issues? Because I'm involved in many different projects. I have friends who are very deeply involved into securities tokenization, for example. The concept is great, but there's no liquidity. We talk about commodities, offline with my two good friends. There are certainly some issues. Do you think scalability could be an issue, or do you think that liquidity could be better managed? What's your view?
And thanks for the question, and a bit of, let's say, step back as well. So when we talk scalability, and Excellency Baroness also mentioned the whole, let's say, worldwide picture. So, and then let me change the liquidity more into the interoperability, because it's very closely linked with that. So, I mean, at the end, what's the role of MasterCard as well? It's literally to connect the different parties across the world. And it's not only the banks which are, let's say, issuing different financial products, in this case, payment instruments, or the acquirers which are accepting them. The whole payment ecosystem became much wider. Today, majority of the companies operating in the Web 2.0, then moving to 3.0. So it's again how to connect it, and that's literally I'm a bit of sometimes saying with the smile is like MasterCard logo. How you take one word and the other, how you connect it, and you have this, let's say, two intersecting circles as well. So this let's say firstly scalability is one part. So if something, let's say together with Talgat, with ITBX and Eurasian Bank, we issue a kind of call it blockchain product. I call it intentionally blockchain product. It can be crypto, maybe it will be a CBDC or any other. But okay, it shall work not only in Kazakhstan, certainly it shall work in Central Asia, in the neighboring countries. It shall be prepared for remittances. And if I come to London, I want to pay in the TFL, I get to Underground, I would like to pay as well. So that's certainly important. And by the way, anybody from us, nobody wakes up and thinks in the morning, oh, I need to make a payment. Normally we don't think like, oh, by the way, I have to get somewhere, I have to get to the conference, so I need to buy the ticket, I need to tap whatever I have, wallet, card, bracelet, whatever, just blink with my eye. These are rather the use cases on the way. What I have at the end in my wallet, bank account, etc., I may have a different currencies. I can have a British pounds, euros, dollars, local tenge, anything else. I want to just have it available. I can have a gold. In this case, I would have either different, let's say, again, blockchain, cryptos, or any other. I would like to pay. So this part of this, let's say, scalability is very important, and MasterCard role is to connect it. In this case, what happened in the background, that's a different story, because still the basic parts remain. You have to authenticate the customers or the device. You have to, or at end, you have to authorize the transaction, and you have to make the whole process. It just, consumer does not think what's happening behind, and our main role is to work in the background. And then the second part about the liquidity, that's why I said this interoperability. Because the whole ecosystem, these are not any longer the banks which are, as I'm saying, issuing payment instruments or accepting. The whole world is becoming much wider. There will be in some cases, there will be more middlemen. In some of the cases, like you've mentioned, may disappear. It can be consumer transactions. There can be simply B2B transactions. It can be different trading transactions. So if we take the whole dashboard of different letters, whatever, P2P, G2P, P2M, I mean, you can literally just almost take any letter and create a dashboard out of that. In this case, it's becoming, let's say, much more complex, and this part has to be interoperable. At the end, MasterCard is a payment technology company. We are not issuing payments, let's say, given cards or instruments. So our role is to connect these different worlds. Okay? So in this case, interoperability then helps with liquidity at the same time. Because, for example, at the end, any transactions has to be cleared and settled. So it depends. I mean, in some of the cases, in majority of the cases, at least in the current world, we need to change from any other currencies to fiat currencies. Or maybe then further to the certain, let's say, call it stronger or more popular currencies like dollar, euro, or British pound. So let's say rather looking from that perspective. And maybe last note, it wasn't in the question, but talking about the tokenization, it's also depending how do we explain this to the society. Because, I mean, even today, people are using constantly tokenized transactions. So it's not any longer the chip and pin transactions. You pay with your Apple Pay, Google Pay, in some countries Samsung Pay, in some other countries with the directly issuer wallets. These are all tokenized transactions. These are not any longer, so it can be just a number of the cards, it can be a virtual card. Later on, the given card can be tokenized. Mostly because of the safety, security reasons, but also because of the great user experience. So actually, today, probably all of us, we are already using tokenization, just in the different use case, not directly on the blockchain. So at the end, our role, despite this scalability, interoperability, or liquidity, is the whole, call it some kind of the financial education, literacy, just bringing the topic a bit closer.
Sure, I think that is really good information for all of us. You know, since we talk about MasterCard and so forth, you know, maybe many of us would be more interested in what is the Web3 journey like, you know, within the MasterCard family. You know, what kind of adoption have you been taking part at? You know, because many of us would just say that, oh, MasterCard is just we just talk about payment, you know, but there's a lot of workings behind this whole ecosystem, you know. Maybe can you share some of your Web3 journey?
Sure, and let me also split it between a bit of technology, overall, and environment. So, I mean, firstly, as I said, traditionally there are banks on the issue or issuers, acquirers, however we split it. In the Web3 with the whole, let's say, decentralized environment, certainly you have many more players in the system. So it's the first thing, like, whom do you onboard into the whole payment environment that it's still safe and secure. And I mean, certainly, despite, let's say, you can pay with MasterCard wherever you go, the brand brings the huge trust. Not only the trust for the consumers, but also the trust for any companies which are connecting in this. So that's the one part. So we have a lot of these reviews. Okay, what will be in the future and already coming? What are the different companies which are or entities which are coming to the payment environment? How do we verify them? How do we onboard them directly to MasterCard or through the other, let's say, middlemen? Second part is also what is being sold. Because here we talk about a lot of digital assets. There are not any longer, let's say, physical products or certain services. So it's also, okay, how trusted it is. And what is being sold, because at the end you have a specific categories. It's not any longer you buy you bought a shoe, or you bought a painting, but maybe you just whatever. Did you bought a digital twin or anything else? So looking from the product services, what is being sold is also very important. The different type of the currencies. We talk a lot about the blockchain. On the blockchain, we actually look from the two different perspectives. Certainly from the safety and security. So how do you store the transactions? How do you, generally store and secure the data? So it's very important. But also on the payment side. I mean, again, as MasterCard, we are not producing currencies or doing specific things on the blockchain. Once we see there is a technology and there is another payment, call it currency as well, how to enable that you can pay. So this, again, interoperability. At this moment, a lot of transfers to the, so we changed the blockchain type currency into the fiat currency. Overall, what is there, and again, happening behind the scenes is the whole safety and security. Here, for example, what certainly helps MasterCard is the whole knowledge we additionally acquired with the company CipherTrace. So right now, it's CipherTrace, one of the global companies overall in the crypto, in the blockchain space, from the areas of know your customers, know your transactions, know your partners, companies, a lot of reporting, etc. So that certainly brings a lot of knowledge and capabilities to MasterCard as well. So despite all these technologies which I mentioned, we also invest into the market. So safety, security will be very important. And as it was mentioned already a few times, the regulatory part. We talk a lot as well to the different regulators, associations, other, let's say, parties of the industry, what potentially needs to be developed. We are sharing the experience across the countries as well to enable different solutions for the future. So again, technology, logic, standards, a bit of investments, and then the policy as well.
Okay, I think that covers a lot, you know, in the space, you know, for MasterCard. You know, and that is going to be a really good use case, you know, in years to come. Daria, so what do you think are the best use cases, you know, for Web3? You know, I think many of us would love to hear what kind of use cases, you know, is dearer to your heart. You know, what works best?
honestly, it's about metaverse because I think metaverse is future. And right now you can buy, for example, some clothes in metaverse from Gucci, Adidas, and a lot of the brands. In the future, we all have like our own avatar. It's so interesting because you can wear different brands in like avatar. It's so like a bit strange because you spend your money not like real clothes, but on your something that's like in imagination. It's a little bit like weird, but it's so interesting because in for example, Facebook, they changed the name. There was Facebook, right now it's Meta. It's like maybe future is like also like part of the metaverse. In a lot of the project, and we see they are looking for interesting metaverse project and community. And for example, a lot of the country, they right now would like to produce the ID card in metaverse. That your like avatar will have like metaverse passport, and you will pay your taxes in Meta. It's so incredible, and I think this is like combined with 2 and 3. And this is something new for all of us, even if you work in blockchain. But for people who are like from just normal world, they like in shock. What is this? Why I need to buy this NFT, for example, from Adidas or from Balenciaga? This is so like strange. It's like $200 for what? For just a photo? Yes, because this is like a picture and mean nothing. But for a lot of the people, the NFT, they can share music, yeah, because you can buy rolls of the music, or for example, some pictures. This is so interesting because I think metaverse and NFT, this is like combining between Web2 and Web3 area.
That's also a really good one. But I hope if your loved one can give you a Chanel bag in metaverse, you will be as happy as getting a physical one. Yeah.
No, thank you. Better in real. But if this will be NFT in Chanel, why not? Because it's also like in a few years it will be so expensive. Or Hermes, why not?
Okay, that's a very easy thing to understand. Tagat, what about you? What are the best use cases that you have, in mind?
Yeah, I agree with Daria. First of all, we can see that there are a lot of use cases now, starting from NFTs, fund tokens, and we've been experiencing, this market is still new in the early stages of development, and for like past 10, 15 years, we can see a lot of progress. It's been ICOs, STOs, IOs, now it's NFTs, fund tokens. We've been talking to different football clubs this year and last year in Bundesliga, in APL, and they're all excited about the future of NFTs and the fund tokens, even though now it's a little bit quiet, not as hyped as it was last year or 2 years ago.
Yep.
But there is definitely a synergy. Maybe it has to evolve. It doesn't have to be in the same way as it was before. This crypto market has to evolve anyway in order to succeed, in order to compete or complement the traditional financial markets. So I believe NFTs should definitely evolve as well. Maybe they should be backed by the real world assets as well. That's what we try to do. And the future is bright, I think, for crypto.
Yeah. With more people taking part, the future is definitely brighter. What about yourself?
Look, from today's world, again, you have probably kids as well, like looking right now at the gaming industry as well. Not looking only at so despite arts or anything else what was mentioned, currently really the gaming is a huge interest. By the way, not only for kids, because if you don't take the local global statistics, is actually the rather older people who are playing, and even more interestingly, almost half are ladies as well. So it's not only for boys as normally you could think. Huge business, and already there are a lot of NFTs, a lot of this type of the, let's say, type of the transactions. And again, at the end, you need to pay for another skin, another, let's say, device or anything else. So that's already working today. And I believe like building on this very pragmatic use cases, being able to like really focused, being able to explain what it is, that is not so far, it's already something which is existing with us today, that will bring, let's call it, revolution by evolution.
Yeah, I think gaming is definitely the way forward because it's easy to connect. It's a very good gateway to Web3 and also to to the metaverse. Because you need a certain environment to connect, play, and then work within a sustainable ecosystem. I think That would be good. What about Tim? Best use case in your humble opinion?
I mean, the use case I see most is, at least with my clients, is in the gaming space as well.
Okay. All right. I work a lot with bigger brands. You know, we have my good friend from Oracle Red Bull Racing at the next panel. You know, I think big brands are really trying their best to get into the space, you know, and trying to engage with their current community, you know. They try to use the new technology to bring them back, you know, have more stickiness so that the whole process of engagement, you know, with their fans, with their stakeholders can be a lot more closer than what we see, you know, in the Web2 space. So I think that's a great one. You know, we have a little bit more time. You know, we will just end off with one question. What do you see the future is going to be like, you know, for the Web2 to Web3 transition, you know, starting from Tim?
I think it's going to be a difficult transition because I think the human instinct is to centralize, and I think that instinct is also sort of encouraged by the obvious and tested financial advantages of centralization. Giving up control, decentralization is always going to bring with it difficulties, and those difficulties are not insurmountable. But I think that as we try to move into that space, we need to understand what some of the real movers against moving into a decentralized space are. And those may well be vested interests, but also getting over those difficulties as regards being able to monetize a decentralized space. If we can work through those, and we can perhaps talk more about those ideas, but I think once those issues are worked through and solutions are found, I think that the transition will become easier, but it's not going to be a smooth transition.
Well observed. Yourself?
I mean, similar in this case, it's certainly big change. So that's what I mentioned before, like very focused approach to the specific use cases to be able to explain, because otherwise there is too much unknown in this case. So from some parties will be very interested, some others probably very reserved. So rather, you know, this, as we would call it, killer use cases. And the other parties, probably a lot will depend also on the regulators.
Sure. Do you have a more optimistic future on the outlook?
Yes. For me, the most important is to have a base for with a regulatory framework where all those tokenization and transition can be done smoothly. For example, in Kazakhstan, we've been involved in drafting those regulations for asset-backed tokens, and so there is a clear differentiation between security tokens and asset-backed stablecoins. For us, it's an easy regulatory environment right now because we know how to tokenize, where to sell it, to whom to sell it. In some jurisdictions, it's difficult. We have a friend here, it's a legendary football player, Sol Campbell. He's a friend of mine. Last year, we met with a few top football clubs in Germany and in English football, and they're all excited about Web3 and crypto. They just need a proper use case how to integrate football experience with Web3 experience. And as I said, it's an early stage of development. Probably in 2 years, there will be a massive, huge shift. At the moment, there is still mostly around crypto to crypto or crypto to fiat. We don't have a lot of successful use cases or business cases for tokenized commodities. That's what we try to do, and maybe next year it will be a proper business case that we can happily share with you.
Can I jump in? Sorry, Andy. Sorry. I was just going to make one observation on. I think that the difficulty with what you've described, Talgat, is you can have a jurisdiction, and I know the Kazakh jurisdiction very well, which would allow, or which will be advanced in terms of classifying, and which will be advanced in terms of making certain products accessible and available. That only goes so far because the difficulty, I think, which is going to come across, and it applies across Web3 generally when we're talking about a lot of these products, is the protective instincts of other regulators in other jurisdictions. The moment you try to market, for example, outside of the AIFC or the Kazakh jurisdiction, into a new jurisdiction, regulators might well say, as you've alluded to, that this is a security or this potentially has some reasons why you can't sell it in our jurisdiction. And that starts making the whole idea of this global accessibility, starts cutting across it. So I think those difficulties need to be overcome. You could say, well, I can sit in the UK and I can choose to access the products that are available in Kazakhstan, and there's no restrictions on me doing it in Kazakhstan, and there's nothing that stops me doing that in the UK. But I wouldn't know about those products unless the entities in Kazakhstan can market. And getting regulators in other jurisdictions or across the world comfortable and able to allow products to be marketed is, I think, going to be the biggest hurdle that needs to be crossed in this space.
I just want to add on, but I think a lot of these regulators that I'm talking to is that they couldn't even get their own act together,
Yes.
To be honest. And if they can't do that, it's so difficult for them to talk to the different governments.
And they may not, they may have many reasons, which is why I mentioned vested interest, many reasons why they may not want to. If they have, say, 10% of UK GDP coming from a particular sector, why do anything that's going to rock that boat by allowing a disruptive sector into the market, and they're never going to get the support of that sector in allowing them to do so. I think those are the kind of difficult. It's different in a jurisdiction like Kazakhstan, obviously, because in a sense it's the disruptive economy. It's allowing these actors in because it's a way to disrupt the existing New York, Frankfurt, London economies, and rightly so. They should do that, and the technology is obviously much better. And unless the UK and the other economies start catching up, in 10 or 20 years' time, there may not be necessarily a London to talk about. So
true.
I think it's
So sorry. Yourself.
Thank you, so it's my turn. I could say, for example, Web1, it's about just trading. You can have like a login or your own account, but right now we have Web2, so everyone knows what does it mean Web2. But what does it mean Web3? This is your data, will belong to you. And for example, right now we have an interesting project, it's Lens Protocol, and they try to work in the social media and like tweet, like right now we don't have a Twitter, but X or Instagram. This is like different social media, but Lens try to do it like, for example, if I follow you in Facebook, in Meta, I will follow you in Instagram, or for example, I will send for you some message in Twitter, you will get the Lens protocol, like all social media in one, and you will belong data to you. For example, in Web2, Facebook can block you, but in Web3, this will be impossible because you can do whatever you want. It's from one hand, this is a little bit tricky because it's sort of like bad thing in social media, but from another hand, like all of your data uses no intermediary. For example, it's no banks. You can send any transaction like to your friends without like any commissions. Of course, like a lot of governments, they care about it because they care about taxes. But this reason Web3 will be also like so strictly regulated in the future, and we will know how to recap. For example, in the USA, this is one rule. In the UK here, like we can pay taxes here from the like cryptocurrency and also all of the transaction. And I think in the future, like of course, it will be like so near with Web3, but so waiting for this time, maybe all of our world will be like Web3 world.
Thank you. I just, my personal take is that, please do not always think that, it is still very early for Web3, And then you will hear some of these speaker on the panel, not here, some of my other friends, they say, oh, we are now in 2.5. I think those are really not really futurists, Just think about it this way, Web3 is really now. So if you are in the sector, you are one of the pioneers, and you should do more to try to make a further step, broader step into the whole Web3 space. Get more people in the industry, get more of the Web2 guys into the space, and we will all create good use cases, With that, thanks everyone, thanks to panelists.